let's go back there. We're not tied to what I was talking about now. We were just filling up time until you got back on the show. So, Brian Flores, reloaded into your brain. You were talking about the courage necessary to go forward with something like this because you're trading in your coaching career, by all appearances. You're giving it up, and that's why you and I both thought it would never happen.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about what you want. And I got to be honest, if I'm in that situation, like we don't think of it because we're not NFL coaches and we'll never be NFL coaches. So it's like a different world for them. But think about your own industry. If you saw something in your industry, whatever your line of work is out there, that you felt like was not quite what it should be, do you call it out? Do you go to the very top of that profession and risk your own career? And that's what was happening with Flores. And I'm saying in the past tense, but it's still very present. Because Brian Flores, if he wins, do you think that he gets another head coaching job? If he takes this all the way, let's say the courts agree with him and he wins some judgment against the NFL, are owners then going to say, hey, that's my kind of guy? He's the coach. He's the coach I want leading my team. And so this is a very interesting case. And Mike, the other thing is, I know these topics make people uncomfortable, and all people. If you know these topics of racial discrimination or race in general, it's not something that a lot of people like to discuss, especially when it comes to the NFL. We want the games to go on. We want our fantasy football. We want our betting. We don't want any of this real world stuff to get in the way. But I think it's important, no matter how you feel about it, it's important to consider that some of the things that Flores has already said have come to pass. So he said that Stephen Ross incentivized him to lose games. The NFL acknowledged that conversation happened, but they let Ross off the hook, in my opinion, by saying, oh, he was just joking. It wasn't a serious thing. Brian Flores knew that there was a plan to replace him with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. The NFL agreed with that, and they docked the Dolphins a draft pick because of it. So it's not like he's just flying off the handle saying things that nobody can corroborate. Some of this stuff has already been proven. I would challenge everybody out there just to say this, to look at it this way. No matter how you feel about it, and we know, you talked about red states and blue states earlier, we know there are some very strong, entrenched positions on this topic. No matter how you feel about it, just listen. Just take in all the information and think and consider what it means. You may think it's total BS, or you may come away with a revelation or a nugget that you hadn't considered before. So I'm glad that we're at this stage where it can be out of the darkness and into the light.
And the bottom line is this: no matter how much merit Brian Flores' case has, and I think we would be beyond naive to assume there hasn't been an issue with racial preference by NFL owners over the decades. And Troy Vincent, the executive VP of football operations, his own past words were quoted in the Flores complaint. I mean, substantively, the NFL has a problem here, but that isn't going to make the apparatus say, okay, fine, go ahead and sue us and force us to spend all this money on legal fees and ultimately beat us in court. They're going to be upset about it. And it is a closed shop. It is one company with 32 branches, even though it is technically 32 different businesses. You don't have many places you can go. And once you start pissing one of them off, you piss a lot of them off. And he didn't just sue one team. He sued 4 teams and the NFL, which is necessarily all teams. It took tremendous courage for the Steelers to give him an opportunity, for the Vikings to make him the defensive coordinator, and the amount of courage it's going to take for an owner to make him a head coach is on par with the courage/stupidity exercised by Jimmy Haslam when he gave Deshaun Watson a 5-year fully guaranteed contract. That's the kind of backlash you're risking from your partners if you do it. It's wrong, but it's reality.
Okay, Mike, if you're Brian Flores, what do you want to happen right now? I was thinking about this last night, too. If I want to be a head coach and I want to be principled, maybe I've reached the point where, okay, I've made my case and I settle with the league. But if I settle with the league, what does that say to the people coming after me? Now, he was very clear when he brought the lawsuit. This is not about me. This is about future generations. And I just wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't say something about it. All right. Does that go away if you settle? Because I think that might be his path. If we're being honest, that might be his path to becoming a head coach. I just don't think if this goes forward, I think it'd be hard for him to be a head coach. I wonder what he does in this situation now that he's here and this can go to court. What do you think he wants right now?
And I think it's, as a practical matter, impossible for a head coaching job to be offered to him as part of a settlement, because that gets into collusion and antitrust issues, the league coming together and basically plucking one team saying you're going to hire this guy. Same thing for John Gruden. Two different contexts, but the same idea. Tiger by the tail, what does the tiger do? And if you're the coach who has the league in a compromising situation, do you keep pushing, or do you settle and take the leap of faith that by settling, by being charitable, they'll take care of me on the back end? I would prefer, if it were me, and it's easy to say because it's not, I would just take the position, I hope somebody does the right thing. Until they do the right thing, I've still got a job at the Vikings. He could be the defensive coordinator for the Vikings as long as Kevin O'Connell is the head coach, and O'Connell's likely going to be the coach for a long time. And I'll hope that somebody shows courage and does the right thing and makes me a head coach. But I'm not going to compromise my case because, again, I'm doing this for people, both who came before me and the people who are coming after me. It's a tough call. It's a tough call, especially once I start throwing money at him. That's the thing. John Gruden can say he wants to burn down the house and expose all these things. Once I start putting money on the table and that stack gets higher and higher, it gets harder to walk away from it, Michael.
Yeah, I think it might be difficult. It'd be more difficult. It's nothing's impossible to prove, but I think it might be more difficult to prove if you're Flores. It might be difficult to prove that the Dolphins fired you for racial reasons. That might be hard to do, even if, even with the Stephen Ross, hey, losing games in draft position is more important than winning games. You don't tell a coach that. And if a coach doesn't agree with you, if the owner wants one thing and the coach does something else, yeah, that usually doesn't work out well for the coach. It's tough to prove, though, that it's racial discrimination with the Dolphins. However, when you talk about the sham Rooney interviews, I mean, I've talked with Tony Dungy about this extensively, and his position, and I think it's the right position, it's like the Rooneys are really the standard of how this is supposed to be done. The Rooneys believe, the dad believed, and Art Rooney believes this too, bring somebody in, identify good people, thoroughly interview them, thoroughly give them an opportunity to express who they are and what they can do. And if you wind up hiring that person, and they've proven they've done it this way, if you wind up hiring that person, give them the resources and time to figure out their program. Now I think that can be proven that there are some sham Rooney interviews. We all know it, and other coaches have known it. They just haven't said anything about it because the opportunity to interview is valuable, even if you know that they're not really serious about you.
The sham Rooney interviews here allegedly happened with the Giants and the Broncos at or about the time or before he was hired by the Dolphins. His strongest case is this. I know we need to take a break, but this is important. People need to understand this. His strongest case is the one against the Texans. Here's why. His case against the Texans is not that you didn't hire me for racial reasons, but you didn't hire me in retaliation for the fact that I filed my lawsuit. And there are some strange facts that went down when the Texans made their hire, because the three finalists for the job were Josh McCown, Jonathan Gannon, and Brian Flores. Those were the three finalists that I believe were announced by the team as the three finalists. And they hired a guy nobody had ever heard of in David Culley. So when it's time to do discovery, text messages, emails, Jack Easterby's phone, Nick Casario's phone, all the various little ins and outs of meetings and discussions and whatever you can get on paper or on video or whatever it may be that makes the case come to life. There's something fishy about the Texans hiring process, and it's much easier to get a jury to understand why a business would want to shun someone who dared to sue. That's so much easier. The second claim is always better than the first claim. And when the Texans didn't hire him right away, even though he was a finalist and they went off the board for a guy nobody ever heard of who was there for 1 year in David Culley, that's his best case, Michael.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at the one and done of David Culley too, and he was a lifelong assistant, and it was hard to make the case that he was the guy for the job, and they treated him like that too. I mean, there were stories, I don't know if you remember this at the time, I know you do, like how Nick Casario would be on the phone with him during games, which is kind of illegal, but would be on the phone with him during games or sending word to the sideline that, hey, what are you doing? Well, we got to do it this way. They were never really happy with that choice, and they proved it by having him there for just a year and moving on to somebody that they really wanted.
That is the aspect of the case. If I was still practicing law and I was involved in that case, I would relish the opportunity to get the documents, get the text messages, get the emails, and piece it together. All it takes is one page that lays it all out there. And chances are at some point somebody said something in writing that will help prove, we can't hire Brian Flores because the
Skull Nation, what's up? It's Victor here from Report Vikings. And hey, we've got some roster movement to talk about. The Vikings have officially signed 2 linebackers, Cam Gill and Max Tooley. Now, this might seem like just depth moves on the surface, but I actually think there's more to dig into here, especially with how this defense is shaping up. Let's start with Cam Gill, probably the more interesting name out of the two. He's a 6'3", 240-pound outside linebacker who came into the league as an undrafted free agent out of Wagner back in 2020. And I know, Wagner isn't exactly a powerhouse program, but the dude grinded his way into the NFL and ended up playing 40 games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 2020 to 2023. His numbers, 29 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 4 QB hits. Not eye-popping, but solid rotational production. Oh, and by the way, he played in 8 playoff games with the Bucs, including that Super Bowl run in 2020. In that game, he had 2 tackles and even split a sack on just 3 defensive snaps. Talk about efficiency. Last year, he played 10 games for the Panthers and put up 22 tackles and 4 QB hits. He bounced around a bit, spent time with the Lions practice squad too, but the guy clearly has experience and special teams value. You don't stick in the league this long without doing the dirty work. For me, Gill is the kind of under-the-radar signing that Brian Flores can make useful. He's physical, aggressive off the edge, and he's got that been there, done that mentality. Might not start, but don't be surprised if he carves out a situational pass rush role. Now on to Max Tooley, a familiar name for us. He was already with the Vikings earlier this year, but got waived in late July. Now he's back for a second stint. Tooley's a former BYU linebacker who went undrafted in 2024 and originally signed with the Texans. He had a super productive college career, 31 starts in 60 games over 6 seasons. Yeah, 6. That's a ton of experience. He's more of a depth guy right now, but with joint practices coming up against the Patriots, it's probably just as much about giving the coaches fresh tape as it is about filling a need. These moves probably tell us a few things. 1, the coaching staff might not be thrilled with the current linebacker depth behind guys like Pace Jr. and Hicks. And 2, with Ivan Pace being used all over the field and Asamoah now gone to the Titans, there's a real opportunity for someone like Cam Gill to sneak into the 53-man roster, especially if he flashes during joint practices or in the next preseason game. But let me throw it to you guys. Do you think Cam Gill has a legit shot at sticking on the 53-man roster? Or is this just a camp body situation? And what about Tooley? You think there's something there worth developing? Drop your takes down in the comments. I want to know who you're rooting for during camp battles. And as always, if you're loving the coverage, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your fellow Vikings fans. We've got joint practices, roster cuts, and preseason battles coming. And you know we're covering all of it right here on Report Vikings. I'm Victor, always reppin' purple, always speaking facts, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Skol.